Yeah.
Love to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, we have a new office manager now, and my secretary comes in at supposed to be there at 10 o'clock every day.
Yes.
And the office manager came to me after about a week or so and said, your secretary is not coming in on time. She's coming in at 10:15, and it's your responsibility to get her here on time. Better talk with her. So I did that. I said, Renee, I said, your start time is 10 o'clock. And she said, yeah, I know that, Bruce, but, I'm entitled to a coffee break every day, 15-minute coffee break, and I just decided to take my coffee break before I come to work.
Interesting.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know if that works so well for me.
Well, that's what I was hoping for guidance here, Zach, that's all. All right.
That's good.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad we got your mic, Bruce.
Yeah. So, Zach, that song, Charity?
She's right back here now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She's over there.
Mountains high, valleys low,
Yes.
reminded me of the Sound of Music. It did. And I brought you a souvenir.
You did?
Yeah.
You brought me a souvenir from last night's Sound of Music
Sound of
sing-along.
Music. I wonder if you just turn your back a little bit. Thank you very much.
Am I going to like this? Tell me when you're ready.
It was supposed to go pop. Oh, what a disappointment. Well, anyway, this.
No.
What? Oh, Edelweiss. I brought some Edelweiss as well. Look at that. Isn't that great? Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Pop shot on me?
Apparently, my pop
The Lord
shot
smited
doesn't
that
work. Yeah.
attack.
Apparently, yeah. Yeah.
That's
Well,
right.
it would have been funny if it happened.
I don't think I was going to let you go with that, Bruce.
No.
I think he was going to
Well,
say no
listen,
to
I
that.
wanted to say something else too, Zach. Is that okay?
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I
okay,
want to let you say anything else more or not.
Well, I was just thinking about the people talking about going to the thing on Thursday. The food thing
yes,
at Hope of the Valley.
the outreach at Hope of the Valley.
And the generosity over there at Pavilions. I was reminded of a barber in Washington, D.C., who had decided to dedicate his week to community service. And a florist came in, and guy did his hair, and wanted to pay. He said, no. He said, I'm dedicating this week to community service. The haircut is free. Later that day, a bakery guy came in, and he gave him the haircut, and he said, oh no, it's free. And the next morning, there was a dozen roses and a dozen donuts at the door. So the following day, a senator came in, and he gave the guy a haircut. Senator was going to pay. He said, no. He said, it's free. So the next day, there were 12 senators at the door looking for a free haircut. Which is, I guess, the difference between the good citizens of this country and the politicians who run it.
Organized for us?
11-0. Dodgers! Woo!
Very excited about that.
That's enough, isn't it?
That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're here again.
So, Zach, I was thinking, as I always do about your sermon. And I'm
glad for that, by the way.
I was reminded of a fellow I know who was really a money-grubbing guy. And you remember last week you talked about that voice, sitting on the shoulder and that kind of thing. Well, he had that experience, I think, tempted by the devil. So what happened to him was he heard a voice that said, take all of your money out of the bank. So that's what he did. He took all of his money out of the bank, and the voice said, go to Las Vegas. So he traveled to Las Vegas, 6-hour trip. And the voice said, go to the Caesar's Palace Hotel. And that's what he did. And then go to the 3rd floor. And on the 3rd floor, there's this really fancy, exclusive place for, high roller gamblers. And the voice said, play roulette. So he went to the roulette table, looked around, hoping for a clue. And the voice said, red 13. So he put all of his money on red 13. Ball went into the roulette wheel, went around and round, 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 stopped. Red 31. The guy said, what's this? He said, oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm dyslexic. The devil's dyslexic.
Well, we welcome Bruce back. He was suffering away in Rome the last couple of weeks.
It was suffering, but not as much as what I experienced this weekend.
This weekend, Bruce?
USC and Notre Dame. But the Dodgers lost, and UCLA lost, and USC was beaten by Notre Dame. It reminded me of the story USC was Notre Dame about the car accident that happened between the Presbyterian minister and the Catholic priest. And it was hard to determine who was at fault. There was this big car accident, and the priest got out of the car, and the Presbyterian minister got out of the car, and they said, do you understand what happened? No, we don't understand it. The priest said, well, the good news is that I have a bottle of wine and we're okay. And the Presbyterian minister said, what good news is that? I have a chalice. And we can share a little bit of joy and thought together. So the priest said, let me pour you wine. And so he poured him the chalice, and the priest said, please, take your first. And he said, well, let me pray first. Let me pray that we both find. And the Presbyterian minister took the drink. And then he handed the chalice to the Catholic priest. And it's now the priesthood. And the question was, what was the priest saying? God, please make the priest arrive quickly so that they can report the Presbyterian.
We're going to receive our offering for the morning.
Oh, Zach.
Hi, Bruce. How are you this morning?
I'm really okay, but, this Halloween time raises a lot of questions. For me, anyway.
What kind of questions does it raise for you, Bruce?
Well, you know why ghosts like to ride elevators?
No, Bruce. I don't know why ghosts
like to ride
elevators.
Yeah, it raises their spirits. Zach, do you know what the favorite fruit is of a vampire?
I don't know, Bruce.
Nectarines. I had another question, Zach. Do you know why the baby ghost couldn't see his mother?
Why the baby ghost couldn't see his mother?
She was a transparent. Okay, all right. And I did have another question to ask you. I had a couple questions to ask you. The question I really wanted to ask you was about what do you call a vampire who lives in the kitchen? Count Spatula.
We're going to take our offering now.
Yeah, let's take our offering now. You know, Zach, you didn't get any of those right. You're the one who's here today because
Thank you.
I had a question that I thought a woman might sort of understand.
How can I help you?
Well, I have a friend by the name of Elizabeth, and she has been dating a guy for a year and a half. She's 30 years old, and they just broke up. And this is tough, you know. She really loved him and all that other stuff. And so she started talking to me about it, and I said, "Oh, come on, Elizabeth, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're capable of earning money. You're just a great, great woman. Don't worry about it. There'll be another guy." And she said, "Well, Bruce," she said, "it's not that easy." Well, it's sort of like going to the pumpkin patch on the 31st of October. By the time you get there, all of the good ones are gone. And the ones that are left seem to have had their brains taken out with a spoon. Apparently that's a problem.
You must not be a Christian.
I'll work on it.
Thanks. Hello, Bruce.
A lot of things going on this time of the year. The mall is particularly busy.
Chris, do you get him prepped for these things? Yes, Bruce, the mall is busy. Yes.
So there was this woman by the name of Heather who was shopping at the mall, and she got the gifts that she intended to put them in the back of her car and pulled out of the mall and turned right. And on the corner was a woman, an older woman, waiting at the bus stop. And in the spirit of the season, she thought, I'm going that way. I should pick this woman and give her a ride. It was cold on Saturday and wet. And so she invited her into the car and Florence, and she traveled west.
Good.
So they began talking, as women sometimes do. And
How come all the men laughed at that part
I
of the
don't know.
joke, Bruce?
So Florence said, "Wow, what is it that you have in the back of your car?" She said, "Well," she said, I got a 60-inch flat screen for my husband." Florence thought for a moment. She said, that seems like a very fair trade. Now, my husband's a little older. You think I could get a 52-inch for him? I'm completely biased about this, just want you to know, Okay. But it reminded me, Zach, I don't know if you know about this, but the forces of heaven and the forces of hell actually did play a football game. Yeah. And, well, I'm not sure either, but we'll find out. Let's stick around and see what happens. You know how they do, they talk to the coaches and all, and the coach from the group from hell was really positive about going to be beating the forces of heaven. He was really positive about that. And the sideline reporter said, how is it you can be possibly so positive about beating the forces of heaven? They looked really formidable. And the guy from hell said, I'm not really worried. He said, all the officials come from where we are.
It's a commentary on the officials.
Yeah.
Bruce.
Yeah. Well, I think it's true, Zach. I watched that game. I think that's where they come from.
Thanksgiving, Bruce.
Yeah, well, I went to the football game yesterday. It was not my team that won.
Wow, there's a lot of reaction to your football team not winning, Bruce.
But I wanted to give you some good news, Zach.
Bruce, I would like to hear some good news.
Yeah, the Chargers haven't been doing that well this year either.
I'm aware of that. Thank you, Bruce. Yes, I'm aware of that.
They had a new player audition for them on Tuesday. It was a turkey.
Going to Turkey.
Yeah, and he arrived at the workout and wanted an audition. And they said, well, what position do you play? You're a turkey. He said, well, actually, I'm a wide receiver. So, they practiced, and he was an amazing catcher. He just was fantastic, better than anyone else they had on their team. Uh-huh. What else can you do? He said, I'm actually a good running back. And so they handed the turkey the ball, and he ran through it. He was really, really great. Uh-huh. And the coach was so impressed. They said, we want to give you a signing bonus. We'd like you to join the team.
Okay.
He said, well, I really don't need a signing bonus. I just need a contract through Thanksgiving to Christmas, and I'll be okay. Which reminds me of a father who had two sons, one the optimist and one the pessimist. So to the pessimist, the mother and father wrapped up lots and lots of gifts. A train set, a walkie-talkie, a basketball. And the pessimist said, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to inflate the basketball, the train's going to wreck, I'm going to run out of batteries for the walkie-talkie. The pessimist said that.
Yes.
The opposite stocking, it was full of horse manure. Said, with this much horse manure, there must be a pony for me somewhere.
Nice. I think it's working, Bruce.
Good.
We're excited today. Matt Sargent is one of the members of our church, one of our elders, and he composes his own scores and soundtracks for movies. And it is a huge joy. He's going to be playing an original piece for us during our offering time. So I want to encourage you all to lend an ear as Matt shares with us during our offering time. And it's going to be a real treat for us as we give joyfully to the Lord.
Are the words going to be up on the screen?
No words on the
No,
screen.
okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that is.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, that's okay. You wanted to think that I had something to say?
I'm always wondering if you've
Well,
seen
I was thinking about this. This is not really a biblical teaching, what I'm about to tell you, but it does relate to those folks that go to heaven.
people will go to heaven.
Yeah, and I don't know if you knew this, but there were three people who died and went to heaven at the same time. One was a Presbyterian pastor, and one of them was Mother Teresa, and there was a lawyer. Three of them there at the gates, and Peter walked in, and the first person who got the place to live in heaven was the lawyer. It was a magnificent mansion, terrazzo floors, a tile roof. It was just absolutely fantastic. And everyone was really thinking, that's pretty nice, living, there. And the next person down the road was Mother Teresa, and she was given a nice enough house. I mean, shingle roof and linoleum floors, but still, perhaps she was a woman of simplicity. Maybe that would be something that she would prefer. And the third person in this list was the Presbyterian pastor. The tin roof and the mud floor, dirt floor. Presbyterian minister said, I'm very grateful to be here in heaven, but, the lawyer got the big house and I got this little shack. Does that seem right? And Peter said, well, he said, we have a lot of Presbyterian pastors here in heaven. And we really have quite a few saints. We've never had a lawyer before. That's what happened.
Whoa. Hi, everybody. For those of you who are not aware, Bruce Gridley is one of our elders and is one of our key leaders here. You probably see his face more than many others. He has the bulletins and oftentimes a snappy comment to keep a little pep in your step.
Well, actually, Zach, the Super Bowl is upcoming. You knew that, right?
Bruce, I had heard.
Well, I was really thinking back to the time when I was in high school and wanted to be an athlete. And I knew I wasn't tall enough to be a basketball player. I wasn't 6 feet. I wasn't heavy enough to be a football player. In those days, I was under 160 pounds. So I thought, well, maybe I could become a referee. So they give you an eye test, and I had 20/20 vision. So they said that was too good to be referee. I couldn't have that kind of vision. So I went to the archery coach and said I might want to be an archer. He said, do you want to play offense or defense?
Archery.
So I didn't decide to do that. Anyway, I think ultimately football is my favorite sport. There are 11 guys playing offense and 11 guys playing defense and 65,000 people who can see the game better than any referee on the field. So that's why I like it.
Bruce, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you, Zach. I was thinking about Valentine's Day. You got plans, do you?
We actually don't have any big plans yet, Bruce, but there will be plans at some point.
Well, I was thinking back to when it is that I really became conscious of the importance of Valentine's Day. I think I was a junior in high school, and my English literature teacher was Ms. Grimsley, who was Miss Indiana the year before she began teaching in high school. And I can tell you, as a 17-year-old boy, that was a very, very impressive credential, being Miss Indiana. So, she was the vision, and I said, I can make an impression on her. So I went down to the See's candy store, and I got a box of chocolates, the kind of the red chocolate box, and I put on the card, Ms. Grimsley, be mine.
Yeah.
Bruce. So I put it in, and at the end of the period, she called me up. And you can imagine the palpitations in my 17-year-old heart. Ms. Grimsley is going to talk to me about my Valentine's box. And she says, Bruce, thank you very much for the chocolates. It's going to be a B-, not be mine.
that we have. I'm so grateful for that. We love, absolutely.
And opening up the windows, I thought
Right.
was a darn good idea.
Yeah.
Darn good idea.
Absolutely. That's,
You know-
that's Charity, wherever she is. Thank you, Charity.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a
a
great
really
call.
good idea. It sort of reminds me of something back where I grew up.
What's that, Bruce?
Well,
Bruce,
I-
where did you grow up? If those of us who don't know, where'd you grow up, Bruce?
I was raised in Illinois and educated in Wisconsin.
Before
and-
coming to USC.
Before coming to USC, exactly. And that's a farm country, and a lot of people look for this kind of day to start. Well, not this day, but some day like this to start with the plowing, tilling the soil.
Right.
So it reminds me of a fellow who had a son, an older fellow had a son, and the old fellow wasn't feeling well, and the son needed to take him to the hospital. So he didn't have a car. So the son took the neighbor's car and drove his father to the hospital. Well, that's grand theft auto, right? So he was arrested. The son was arrested and put in jail. Now, the father and son, they love each other a great deal, but the father can't get around because he's old and enfeebled, doesn't have a car, so they write letters back and forth. And we all know, right, that letters in jail are being read by, the jailers. They know that. But notwithstanding, the father and son exchange letters regularly. And the father reports, son, he said, I know this is the time of the year where I need to till the soil in the garden. But I'm too old and I'm not feeling well to do it. I really wish you were here. And the son writes back and says, Dad, I wish I were there too, but maybe it's just as well this year because that's where I buried the bodies. And so, you know how it is. I mean, the police, they read the letters, and so they sent out a squad out there to dig up the soil in the garden to find the bodies, and of course, there aren't any bodies there. So the father writes back and said, they all came out here, and they dug in the garden, they didn't find any bodies. And the son said in response, well, I knew that, Dad, but sending the cops to dig up the garden was the best thing I could do under the circumstances.
That's how he tilled the soil. Got it.
Good.
Whoa. Hi, everybody. For those of you who are not aware, Bruce Gridley is one of our elders and is one of our key leaders here. You probably see his face more than many others. He has the bulletins and oftentimes a snappy comment to keep a little pep in your step.
Well, actually, Zach, the Super Bowl is upcoming. You knew that, right?
Bruce, I had heard.
Well, I was really thinking back to the time when I was in high school and wanted to be an athlete. And I knew I wasn't tall enough to be a basketball player. I wasn't 6 feet. I wasn't heavy enough to be a football player. In those days, I was under 160 pounds. So I thought, well, maybe I could become a referee. So they give you an eye test, and I had 20/20 vision. So they said that was too good to be referee. I couldn't have that kind of vision. So I went to the archery coach and said I might want to be an archer. He said, do you want to play offense or defense?
Archery.
So I didn't decide to do that. Anyway, I think ultimately football is my favorite sport. There are 11 guys playing offense and 11 guys playing defense and 65,000 people who can see the game better than any referee on the field. So that's why I like it.
Well, no.
Well, I do, and I think everyone's noticed the weather, right? I mean, it's really been a lot. And did you see the number of traffic accidents that were out there?
You know, Bruce, I did not.
It is amazing. In fact, the Channel 14 weatherwoman was involved in a very serious accident. You probably didn't see that either. No. Yeah, she had her arms broken, both left and right arm, and both her left and right legs broken. And that's a serious accident. They took her to the hospital. They put casts on both of her arms and both of her legs.
Channel 14, you said?
Channel 14, yeah.
Okay.
Now, she wasn't very good at predicting the weather,
Okay.
but they think she'll be better with the forecasts.
You have anything sad for that? How are you today, Bruce?
Well, I'm pretty good, Zach. It was really nice to have Stan talk about the Passover
Last week,
last
yeah,
week,
when we had the Passover presentation, Jews for Jesus, that's right.
Stan was Jewish, and a lot of people have backgrounds. I'm not Jewish, but Scottish.
You're Scottish?
Yeah, you probably know a lot about Scots folks. They're thought to be short-tempered and dim-witted, which tells you a little bit about me and reminds me of a story.
Reminds you of a story?
Reminds me of a story.
Okay.
Yeah. The Scotsman went to the store and asked the clerk where the scotch was. And the clerk said, "Well, what are you, Scottish?" And because he was short-tempered, he got angry at that question. Said, "Well, if I asked for English muffins, would you ask me if I'm English? If I asked for Polish sausages, would you ask me if I'm Polish? If I asked for tacos, would you ask me if I'm Mexican?" And the clerk said, Well, no, I guess not. I didn't mean to offend you. But the reason I asked is because you're here at Home Depot, which shows that he was dim-witted. And I'm not running in 16, but I thought, why would I not want to do that? Well, I listened to Bill Clinton, who gave me advice about that. Bill Clinton said, being president is like being in the middle of a cemetery. There are lots of people who are underneath you, but none of them are listening. So I decided not to run. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about going to the baseball game.
Yes, Bruce, we had a great time at the baseball game last night. Thank you for arranging for that for our
okay.
community.
It was a little different for me than some of the other times I've been to Dodger Stadium because who was the passenger in my car? I had, as you know, 3 of our more elderly women traveling with me in the car to Dodger Stadium.
That's wonderful, Bruce.
It was being able to help folks who wouldn't normally be able to go to a baseball game into my car was great. It was a little different experience, though, when we got to the place where you walk in with the tickets. You know, normally how they ask you to open your purse, your bag, and look in to see if you have any, weapons. When I was there with those 3 women, they asked for a pharmacologist to come over and take a look at what they had inside their bag. And the other thing I thought about as I was traveling back with these 3 older women, I said it was the first time in my life where the average age of the passengers was the same as their body temperature. So just, the same number. It was the first time that ever happened to me. There you go.
It's taking on just a life of its own now. I don't even know what to do with all this. Why not, Bruce? Why can't we do that all
We've
day?
got daylight savings time starting today.
Oh,
Daylight
yeah.
savings time. Now, I'm not a real big fan of daylight savings time.
Why is that, Bruce?
Well, it seems to me like this is something that the government imposes on us. And it, the idea of saving, only the government would tell you that if you take $1 from your one pocket and put it into your other pocket, you're saving. Only the government would think that. And as a wise Indian chief once said, when responding to the explanation of daylight savings time, he said, "You mean if I cut the bottom of my blanket and attach to the top of my blanket, I'll have a longer blanket?" That's what the government wants you to believe.
We always learn. Charity, thank you for leading us in worship today and that music. Now I just want to honor you and thank you so much for worship. Please, let's do that. Absolutely. Yay. And the team, and the team, and the team.
All right, we were going to have a graphic for my
I heard about this.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen. So you guys have to use your imagination.
Our board, as you know, went out today. Not ready for that. It happens sometimes. But don't worry. We know it's going to be repaired. The Lord can do that.
And a few dollars with an electrician. All right, so here's the story. It's springtime and baseball time, right? And remember, Zach, we would go as a church to the Dodger baseball game in August.
Once a year, right?
Annually, they have, on Fridays, they have fireworks and hot dogs and Cokes, and we like to do that.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about a team that did that last year, the Modesto Nuts Little League team. Now, we were going to show you the graphic. There really is a team in Modesto called the Modesto Nuts. And this is their minor league baseball team. They have cheerleaders, a walnut, and an almond.
So the cheerleaders are a walnut and an almond?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're in costume, but, you know. Anyway, I wanted to tell you about the T-ball team that the coach brought down to watch the Dodgers game on that Friday night. All right?
Sure, this is going, Bruce.
Yeah, well, it may not be funny, but it's going to be long, all right? So anyway, the coach comes down, but of course he has to prepare the kids beforehand to tell them what to do at a baseball game. So when the national anthem is played, the coach says, "Rise, Nuts," and they sing the national anthem. And then when Andre Ethier hits a home run, he says, "Cheer, Nuts," and the kids stand up and cheer, yay, it's good. And there was a bad call at first base, and he taught the kids, boo the umpire, boo Nuts, up Nuts, boo Nuts. All right, so anyway, he goes at the end of the fourth inning to get the hot dogs and the Coke for the kids, and comes back, and the kids are just in huge disarray. Everything seems to be going wrong, and he asks the assistant, "What's happened?" And the assistant says, "Well, the vendor, the food vendor came by." And the coach said, "Well, what was the problem?" Well, the guy yelled out, peanuts. We lost control.
Hello, Bruce.
You know, Zach, on a serious note, if I can, just the thing that we saw about Memorial Day.
Yes.
You know, I grew up in a time, I was born in the year that World War II ended. And within 3 years, after fighting Nazis, we were fighting the communists in Korea. And everyone I knew, every family I knew, was affected in some way by those two wars. And therefore, you know, we would talk about war experiences. And I had a chance to do that when I was in elementary school, when the teacher asked about that. Do you have any relatives who've been in the military? And I said, yeah. My Uncle Dale was a pilot and was shot down in the Korean War. And the classroom, oh gosh, tell us about that. Well, he told me this is what he did. He said, I grabbed the bottle of whiskey and the machine gun and the bayonet and jumped out of the plane before it touched the ground. He said, on the way down, I drank the whiskey. When I arrived on the ground, there were 100 communists there, and I shot 70 of them with my machine gun, and I killed 20 of them with a bayonet, and the rest of them I strangled with my hands. Oh, everyone had their eyes wide open, and imagine that. Well, said the teacher, what did you learn from that? I said, don't mess with Uncle Dale when he's been drinking.
You mean our drum? You know.
You know, it's summertime, Zach.
Yes, Bruce, it's summertime.
And it reminded me of my uncle, Uncle Clarence, who was a dairy farmer in western Pennsylvania. And my grandfather died in 1945, and at age 16, he took over the farm that had been farmed by my grandfather. And there were 3 young ones, including my mom. And he was a really hard-working guy. And he decided that they wanted to have a vegetable garden. Now, do you know the word bottomland? Bottomland?
Bottomland?
Yeah, it's land that it's fertile, but it's near the river and has lots of rocks and shrubs and stuff like that. I mean, it's really rugged land, but if you can clear the land, it's great for a vegetable garden. So my uncle decided that's what he was going to do. And so cleared the brush and hauled away the stones. I mean, it was a lot of work. And it took him nearly the whole year. And the next year, he planted the vegetable garden, and he was really proud of it. So he invited the pastor of his Presbyterian church to come over and take a look at his garden. And the pastor was really impressed. He said, I've never seen corn so beautiful. He said, and the tomatoes, they look so fantastic. And I see the lemons. He said, this really must be God's work. My uncle said, well, if it is God's land, that's good, Pastor. But I can tell you, he never would have been able to do it without my help.
Bruce brings up a good point. Bruce brings up a great point for today's offering.
Good morning, Bruce.
Hey, Mary Lou.
How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. I've told you that I have a son, a 20-year-old son, who does stand-up comic work. I don't know too much about it, but it made me think of a story about a comedian. Now, you know, one of the hard things about being a comedian is there's always an element of harshness or difficulty or pain associated with telling a joke. It's oftentimes the case that as comedians, they make fun of people they know or situations they're in. And in a marriage, it can cause strain because oftentimes the comedian's joke is about his wife. And this was a story of a comedian who was telling tales about his wife, getting a lot of laughs, but it was unsettling to their marriage. And the wife said to the husband, you know, I think we need to go away for a weekend and talk about our relationship together because I'm just not real sure about this. So they went up to Mammoth and went on a hike out into the mountains, and were about an hour out from Mammoth in the middle of the woods, and the wife said, let's sit down here and have that discussion we were talking about. And they did, and the first thing she asked was, do you love me? And he said, well, of course I love you. Of course I love you. She said, well, that's good. So she drew out of her purse a vial of fluid, dark fluid, and said, drink this. And he did, and, it's poison, you're poisoning me. And she began to laugh. And then she said, well, you know, you always tell me that laughter's the best medicine, so I think this would be a good time to find out if that's the truth. That's the sign that everyone's supposed to sit down. Did everyone like the music? Yeah, the music, that little thing there, is something new.
Bruce, you seem to be working every week at adding more elements to your greeting to us.
I'm trying to keep your attention, Zach. Listen, you were an actor at one time, right?
Long time ago, Bruce.
Yeah, well, it's tough, really, tough being an actor, right? Yeah, and a lot of actors are down and out. And there was a fellow who was an actor who had come from New York and had not really done well at all. And the fact is he had his dog and a shirt on his back and really nothing else. So he was feeling bad and went into a bar here on Ventura Boulevard, the Mad Dog Tavern. I don't suspect you've been there, but Mad Dog Tavern on Ventura Boulevard, and went up and said, I'd like to have a drink. And the bartender, you know, they're savvy guys. He said, you know, you look like a down and out actor. Can you pay for the drink? And the fellow said, no, not really, but I'll bet you my dog can talk. And the bartender said, all right, well, listen, if your dog can talk, I'll give you a drink. So the actor said to his dog, what's on the top of this building? And the dog said, roof. And the actor then turned to his dog and said, what's around the outside of a tree? And the dog said, bark. And then the actor said to the dog, who was the greatest baseball player ever? And the dog said, Ruth. Well, the bartender, you know, he realized he'd been flim-flammed by this guy, called the bouncer and tossed the fella out. The bouncer tossed the fella out, kicked the dog out, and the fella's out on the street out here in Ventura Boulevard, and the dog turns to him and says, I guess I really blew that last answer here in Los Angeles when they ask you who the greatest baseball player is. You're probably supposed to say Sandy Koufax. That's what the dog said.
amazing. I love how you just can't get enough of seeing each other and sharing the joy of life together. And speaking of the joy of life, we have Bruce this morning with us.
Well, I wanted to talk about the question that was being asked by a little girl, a mother, because it's Mother's Day, right? It's a good question to ask.
It's a good question to ask.
So the mom had brunette hair, and her daughter noticed that she was getting some gray in her hair.
Sure.
And the daughter said, Mom, why do you have that gray in your hair? And she said, well, dear, every time you do something wrong, I get a gray hair.
Oh, no.
So the daughter went over and talked to grandmother and said, was my mother a really, really bad girl when she was young? And the grandmother asked, well, why do you ask? She said, because you have all gray hair. That's the answer. Well, Mary Lou, thank you. You know, I've talked a little bit about Elders Ridge, Pennsylvania, which is the town where my family was, my mother's family was. And I wanted to share with you an event that was impactful on my life. There was a man there by the name of Tim McBride who passed away. And the pastor on Sunday said, now, we're going to have a memorial service for Tim. Now, I know that most of you know him as the banker in town, and some of you have had run-ins with him, and he's foreclosed your home, and he never did give anything to our Presbyterian church. But I'd ask you to be forgiving Presbyterians and come next Saturday for his memorial service. And most of the congregation showed up. And the pastor talked a little bit about, death, and you know how pastors talk about that at funerals. And then he said, I'd like someone to come up here and say something nice about Tim now that he's gone. Well, everyone just sat there. No one got up. And he said, come on now, he may have been a despicable guy, but you need to say something nice. And no one got up. And the pastor said, well, listen, we're not going to bury him until one of you folks comes up here and says something nice about Tim. And my Uncle Clarence, who was an elder of the church, farmer, you know how kind of farmers walk like this. Anyway, walked up from the front of the church, and he said, well, Tim wasn't as bad as his brother. Can we bury him now? Dodgers fans, to which the teacher said, now, if your mother and father were morons, would you follow what it is that they say? And Melissa said, no, of course not. If they were morons, they'd be Giants fans. Oh, Zach. Oh, how good of you to join us. Great.
Bruce, we have a very loving congregation here.
Yeah.
They love to be together and share life and talk about things, and it makes it so much fun.
Well, it reminds me of two guys who were toward the end of their life. and they've been playing basketball against one another since they were young kids. One was a point guard, kind of a feisty guy, someone might say a cheap shot guy, and the other was a forward. Well, they played against one another, and they really didn't like one another, but they agreed, since they were now old, that the first one who would die would report whether or not they played basketball in heaven.
Would report?
Report, yeah.
How so?
Well,
I'll let you go, I'm sorry.
In a vision, and
Right.
I'm going to get to the
Okay,
fact that
sure.
the nice fellow, the forward, died first.
Okay.
And just after his death, in a vision to the feisty point guard, he was seen, and he said the forward who had passed away, "Yes, indeed, they do play basketball in heaven."
Okay.
And the feisty point guard said, "That's really great. I'm really glad to hear that." And the forward said, "Well, not so quick. We play against the team from hell, and you're their point guard, and we're playing tomorrow."
So good morning to you, Bruce.
Good morning. Gee, a lot of folks talking out here in the aisles.
It's because they're so happy to be
Yeah,
here, Bruce.
I guess. Okay, so Zach, I wanted to talk about something that I do in the practice of law. You know, sometimes.
But does everyone here know that Bruce practices law as an attorney
Yeah,
in Los Angeles?
right.
It's quite a job to have, Bruce.
Well, thank you. I went to school to do that.
That's good.
So people, when they come, sometimes need wills, and particularly people who are a little older, they begin thinking about things about how they want to handle their affairs. And of course, the first thing I say is, how much do you want to donate to the Sherman Oaks Presbyterian Church? And once we get beyond that, we then talk about the other things. So the woman came to me, a woman of a certain age, and said that she wanted to give to the church here, and I said, great. And then she said, I have 2 daughters, but to tell you the truth, Bruce, they're not really very appreciative of me. They don't come and visit. They just go shopping. And I said, well, I think we can take care of that as a part of your estate plan. So I said, what we'll do is we'll provide in your will that you'll be cremated, and we'll scatter the ashes around Bloomingdale's. And that means at least twice a week your daughters will come to visit you. That's what we did.
Okay, well, good morning, Bruce. Now, for those of you who don't know, Bruce is a great big USC fan. So I don't know if you watch college football or not, but they had a big game against Boston College, was it yesterday?
The Catholics beat the Christians. That's exactly right. The USC lost. It's an old tale. I just move on to another subject, though, if that's all right with you, Zach.
Sure, Bruce.
Mother-in-laws can be difficult sometimes. I had a mother-in-law. It's difficult to really know how to deal with a mother-in-law because, after all, if you're a guy, you're taking away their precious daughter. And so for a while, I was resented, I thought. But I figured the way to handle that problem was to give my mother-in-law a really expensive gift. So I bought her a burial plot up at Forest Lawn. And for a birthday, for a birthday. Well, you're rolled on, and the next birthday was coming up, and she said, Bruce, you didn't get me anything for my birthday this year. And I said, well, you didn't use what I gave you last year. Didn't think there was any reason.
Good morning to you, Bruce Gridley. How are you today, Bruce?
I'm good, Zach. Hey, listen, I'm leaving on Thursday for 2 weeks.
Now, Bruce, was that approved?
I thought it was a really good idea. So I'm going to be leaving for Eastern Europe, and as many of you know, I'm from Chicago, and there are a lot of people from Eastern Europe who live in Chicago. As a matter of fact, there are more Polish people in Chicago than there are in Warsaw, Poland. I don't know if you knew that or not. Yeah.
More Polish people in Chicago than Warsaw, Poland?
That sounds like the beginning of a joke, doesn't it? No, it's not at all. I just want to share with you, I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks.
We're going to miss you, Bruce.
Well, and one of the great things about Chicago is that, Eastern European women are really attractive women, And the reason I know that is because Mr. Maley, who was a lawyer in my town, married a woman from Czechoslovakia. And they went up to Wisconsin for their honeymoon. And it's a little rugged up there. And two bears came to their campground. And a big male bear and a female bear came. And the male bear, he grabbed this beautiful Czechoslovakian woman and ran into the woods with her. So the lawyer, Mr. Maley, called the police right away, and they came, and the police said, what happened? He said that the male bear ran away with my Czech wife, and suddenly they saw coming out of the woods the two bears, and the policeman said, which one's the male bear? And the guy pointed right there, and the policeman shot the female bear. And so the lawyer said, why did he do that? He said, well, you never want to believe a lawyer when he tells you the check's in the mail.
For the morning, which means that we're going to receive our offering with our friend Bruce. Good morning, Bruce.
Zach, those kids were really
wonderful.
Wow.
Yes, they are wonderful.
Yeah, wonderful. It's just the word I was looking for. Thanks. Zach, did you know that you can actually listen and watch your sermons on the internet?
Really?
Yeah. You have to go on to Sherman Oaks Presbyterian Church, and there's a drop-down menu that says news, and your sermons are there. So anyone can do that. Now, for those of you that don't want to listen to Zach's sermon, I've got my jokes also available. And for a small price, a CD.
When you have the influence Bruce has, you can create a jokes section on the website.
Yeah. So here's the story, guys. Joel Paris, our wonderful man in the sky, put together this CD of these sort of stories that I've been talking to you folks about so that I could give this CD to my son, who I haven't seen in a very long time,
Right.
who is, by report, a stand-up comic in California. So I thought maybe one way of reaching out to him would be to send him some of my jokes. Now, there's the other possibilities. He'll say they're no good. But one of the jokes that we recorded didn't really get any sound. So if you don't mind, Zach, we'd like to redo that one. It would be great if you would pretend as if you hadn't heard it before.
Got it. That sounds good.
All right.
Well, just so you all know, so this is Bruce's youngest son, and there's not been much contact with his son. So we are praying that God's going to bring them back together again, which is exciting.
All right.
What? Laugh hard at the joke.
All right, so this is...
Only if it's funny, folks.
It's only funny if you laugh, Zach. All right, so this is to my son, Kyle, and it's really about what it is that he's missing, which is an opportunity to know about some of the things that go on in the life of the Presbyterian Church.
Right.
And you're a pastor of the Presbyterian Church, and I want you to know a story about another pastor, not you, but a pastor who was involved in an automobile accident, a serious automobile accident, with a priest. The two cars crashed together, and the pastor and the priest got out of the car, and they were talking with one another, and, you know, it was a red light, but they weren't sure who had it. And they talked about it, and they said, you know, we just can't figure out who's at fault. But we need to call the tow trucks because our cars are ruined. So the priest says, well, not all is lost. I have a bottle of wine in my car. And the Presbyterian pastor said, well, that's great because they've got two chalices in the car. And so the two of them got together. The bottle of wine was opened by the priest. The chalices were brought up by the Presbyterian minister. And so the Presbyterian minister said, well, we should pray. And the priest said, well, let me open the bottle of wine and let me pour you the first glass. So the priest poured into the chalice a glass of wine, and the Presbyterian pastor said, I pray for world peace. What's going on in Croatia is awful. I hope that problem is solved. Whatever's going on in Gaza, I hope that problem is solved. And he took a big drink of the wine. And now it was time for the priest, and the Presbyterian pastor said, you pray for whatever it is that you think is important. And the priest said, well, I pray that the police get here quickly so I can report that you've been drinking. Well, Zach, good morning. Good morning.
Bruce, how are you this morning?
I'm good.
Now, Bruce, I got to say,
What?
Bruce is a very busy man. Bruce is at the wedding that I was at yesterday, and he was barely there for a bit, and then he had to run off to another very important event. So he's a busy, important man.
Well, it was in Beverly Hills. You know, they expect you to show up on time in Beverly Hills.
I've heard that.
Yeah. All right, so, Zach, did I hear you say that this is about to begin the pledge drive? Did I hear you say that?
Yes, our stewardship and pledge
Yeah,
drive, Bruce,
well.
which helps our church have its programs and pay its staff and pay its pastor and lots of other fun things.
Did you know that contribution to the church are tax deductible?
I did.
Yeah,
I'm glad you pointed that
yeah.
out for us, though, Bruce. Thank you very
Well,
much.
and you know, it creates its own issues, though. There was a Presbyterian pastor who was approached by a guy from the IRS, and he was asked, is George Jenkins a member of your church? And the pastor said, oh, yes, he is a member of our church. He's been a member of our church for many, many years. Well, does he attend regularly? Oh, yes, he never misses a Sunday. He never misses a Sunday. In fact, when the choir sings, he sings with the choir as well. He's a wonderful member of our congregation. and what about his prayers and Bible study? Oh, he's fantastic. He attends the Thursday Bible study here at the church, and he's regular. He's a scholar in the Bible as well. The IRS guy said, well, I'm just noticing his tax returns. Does he give your church $10,000 a year? And the pastor said, oh, don't worry about that. I'll fill out his pledge card for him. That would be called theme music, Zach. Theme music.
Bruce, do you have a theme song for us? Is that you coming in? Is that official, Joel, or was that you spur of the moment?
No, that's quite official. That's Van Supe. That sounds like soup, I know, but that's a composer. But as long as we're talking about food, I wanted to talk to you about that anyway.
Food.
Soup, yeah. So, it's tough to know what foods you're supposed to eat.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, they tell you to not have fat, and then you read Time magazine, you're supposed to have fat in your diet. Gluten. Did any of us worry about gluten a few years ago? But no, gluten-free is, like a big deal right now.
Right, I've heard that.
Yeah, and, I mean, I guess vegetables are okay, but I'm told you can turn orange if you eat too many carrots. I only found one food which, for me, really was universally caused grief.
Caused grief?
Yep. Wedding cake. Did it twice, made me sick both times. Great music. All right, so hello everybody. We have the street fair, talked about that. Reminds me of the story of Stumpy and his wife Martha back at the state fair in Illinois. And
Stumpy and Martha at the State Fair.
Stumpy and Martha at the state fair. Stumpy was 69 years old, and his wife a little younger than that. And he said to her, "I'd really like to go on that plane thing they've got, a little Cessna, ride in the plane." And she said, well, I don't really think so. That costs $100, and $100 is $100. So when he was 69, he didn't go. So the next year, they went to the state fair, and once again, he wanted to go into this plane ride, and she said, no, sorry, $100 is $100. So the next year he went, he was 71 years old. He said, listen, Martha, he said, I'm 71 years old. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to live. I think we really should go on this plane together. And so they did. But only after the pilot said, listen, I've been watching you and talking to you for the last 3 years. I know money's a little tight. So I'll tell you what, if you are quiet during this plane flight, out going to go the roundy loop-de-loops and all that other stuff. If you guys can keep quiet, he said, I'll do it for free. So the two of them got on the plane, the pilot went up, loop-de-loop, round and round and round and round, and finally he landed, and he said, you guys are great, but where's Martha? He said, well, she fell out because she didn't have her seatbelt on, and the pilot said, well, why didn't you say something? He said, well, $100 is $100.
didn't. You're
Yeah.
right. Okay, so for those of you who haven't heard yet, we're starting our stewardship campaign. We did send home some pledge envelopes to the members of the church. If you're a non-member, we have these for you to take home. If you're a visitor, there is no pressure to start pledging to the church. We're just glad you're here, okay? So don't feel any pressure, okay? But if you haven't gotten a pledge packet yet and you are a regular part of our family and considering membership or not, please do take home one of these fine pledge packets that Bruce is carrying so nobly. And if you're new, this is the part of the service where Bruce comes and shares an anecdotal story with us. And he even has his own music now, which Joel does cue for us. So we heard the song, the dun 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 dun.
So, Zach,
Yes, Bruce.
is it time for me to speak? Yeah, okay. So, Veterans Day, wearing a veteran's tie. I hope you noticed
I
that.
noticed. It's very patriotic, Bruce.
One of the great men I met when I was young was an admiral who lived sort of behind me in my little town in Illinois. And he was fantastic. He was a great inspiration to me. And he told me about three recruits that came into his office. He was a submarine commander, and one of them was from Alabama, and one of them was from Las Vegas, and the third was from Los Angeles. And he said to the kids, you're going to be in a submarine. He said, it seems like so far away from what you know. It's a good idea to bring something that you relate to, with you. And he turned to the kid from Alabama and said, did you bring anything like that? He said, yeah. He said, in Alabama we have a lot of peanuts. And to tell you the truth, Admiral, I'm told the food's not so good on a submarine. So I'm going to have some peanut butter with me so that if I get really hungry, I can have a sandwich. And then he turned to the fellow from Las Vegas and said, did you bring anything from home? He said, yeah, sure did. He said, I understand it's a lot of dark times down underneath the water. He said, I brought cards with me. He said, I'm a pretty good card player. I thought maybe we'd play poker when we're sort of under the sea and have nothing else to do. Then he turned to the guy from Los Angeles and said, did you bring anything with you? And the fellow from L.A. said, yeah. He said, I brought my car door. Car door? Why did you do that? And the L.A. guy said, well, he said, I heard it's really hot in the submarine. And so when it gets hot, I thought I'd just roll down the window.
Good morning, Bruce. How are you?
I'm doing really well, Zach. Thanks
Great.
very much. I was over at the Shell station on Van Nuys Boulevard. You guys know where they're just north of Ventura Boulevard. And there was a fellow there in a convertible, a beautiful car, and he had his Irish setter with him. It's a dog. You familiar with that breed of dog? Irish setter, reddish dog, very nice dog. Anyway, so he was concerned because he was about ready to buy gasoline, and so he said to the dog, stay, stay. And that's so he could go and pump the gas. Well, there was a woman who was watching him do that. And she said, why are you yelling at the car to stay? Wouldn't it be easier just to put it in park? It would have been easier.
Right. Let's go and find our seats, everybody. Let's go and find our seats. Welcome back. I love how friendly we all are and chatty. I'm as guilty of that as anybody. And hello to Bruce.
Hi, Zach.
Hi, Bruce.
You notice the tie I'm wearing?
Yes, Bruce, I see your tie. It emits your theme song.
That's okay. USC colors, because the team played very well yesterday. USC beat Notre Dame. It was very exciting. It was really, halftime was interesting because, are you familiar with the film, with the book Unbroken?
I haven't seen the film. I've heard of the book.
It opens on Christmas Day. It's a
Yes.
very inspirational story of Louis Zamperini, who was a USC track star in the 1930s and ultimately captured by the Japanese after a 47-day trip in a boat.
Life raft, yeah.
And he was tortured. He became a inspirational speaker, a Christian inspirational speaker, and died in July, 97 years old.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I mentioned that because it was the Zamperini family at USC's halftime that was honored, and of course appropriately so. And it prompted me to think of a story about a USC guy and a Notre Dame fan who were captured by the Japanese in World War II.
Well, was it a USC fan and a Notre Dame fan?
Yeah, they were captured by the Japanese in World War II,
Okay.
and they were sentenced to death. And the Japanese commander said to the Notre Dame fellow, I'm going to grant you one last request. He said, well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to hear the Notre Dame fight song one last time. And then he turned to the USC fan and said, what would you like? And he said, I'd like to be shot first.
I don't see anywhere in the order of service where it says Sunday humor. Do you see here in the bulletin?
Typo.
Oh,
Typo. Well, Doug, I wanted to ask you if you'd heard about what was going on over at the Valley Presbyterian Hospital up at Van Owen and Van Nuys. No. Yeah.
what's going on at the Valley Presbyterian?
Well, it's the Valley Presbyterian Hospital, and it's a wonderful hospital. It's in our community, of course, and they have an ICU unit there. And they had noted that there had been an unusual concentration of deaths in the ICU unit at 11 p.m. on Sunday nights. And it made people begin to talk about why people would be passing on at 11 p.m. on Sunday. So there was talk that they thought that maybe an angel was coming at 11 p.m. and taking those who were sick and dying to heaven. And so several of the members of the staff decided that they would like to have a glimpse of an angel. And so they hid in the ICU to see whether at 11 p.m. on a Sunday they would get a chance to see an angel. And so there they were, and at 11 p.m. on the dot, the door of the ICU unit swung open. But there was no angel, it was Felix, the Sunday maintenance man. And they watched as he bent down, unplugged the life support systems, plugged in the vacuum cleaner, and began vacuuming. That's what happened over there.
At a Presbyterian hospital?
It happens even amongst Presbyterians.
To share what God's doing, what we're all going through, and to see each other on Sunday morning. And no one looks more festive today than Bruce in his reindeer-attired tie.
I was looking for something with a manger, and I just couldn't find any ties with mangers on them at Macy's. Zach, this is sort of the end of the college and high school football season. And I don't know that anyone here would follow high school football, but the state championships are going on starting this weekend. And I was thinking back to the time when my son Cole played football at Redlands. He was really a great player. He was broke school records in tackles for a linebacker and tackles for loss. He was really good.
Wow, Bruce, that's great.
And I was happy about that. And yet he needed some money, so he got a job at a grocery store where he could earn some money. It wasn't something he'd ever done before, but it was, a good first experience. And a woman came up to him and said, "I'd like to buy a half a head of lettuce."
Half a what?
Half a head of lettuce.
Oh, sure.
And he said, we don't sell half heads of lettuce here. You got to buy the whole head of lettuce. She said, no, she said, I insist. I want a half a head of lettuce. And he did what everybody should do. He said, let me check with my manager. So he went back to the manager and said, there's this dumb woman who wants to buy a half a head of lettuce. And what he didn't know is that woman had followed him into the manager's office. And he said, and this woman here would like to buy the other half. Well,